Hello and welcome to a new week of meals. I am starting off with some sliders. These are ham and cheese sliders. I'm kind of just winging this particular meal based on the last couple times I did like oven sliders, but this one's going to be ham and cheese. I am using the artisanal bread that we used, I think, the last time I made some sliders. Really liked it. This particular batch was so fresh and soft that it was really kind of hard to slice, but I was able to slice across, put the bottom down, and then add the fillings. And as per usual, I am recording this with the dogs in the room, so if you happen to hear them do their thing, they're just living life. So here we go with the first layer of the filling. We have some extra sharp cheddar cheese that I had sliced off of a block, so I'm just going to put this down and then add the rest of the filling. Once the cheese is down, I'm going to go in with the meat. I just have this Black Forest ham, deli meat, sandwich meat. You can use whatever you want. I'm using Black Forest ham. You can use honey cured. You can use whatever you want, really. You can put turkey in if you want to add to this, but I'm just using the ham here just to make it easy. And I'm just slicing it up and putting the layers down to use basically the whole packet and just trying to make it fit in the dish. I'm going to sprinkle some shredded cheese. This is Mexican style, just a light layer here on top of the meat, again to act like kind of a glue for the rest of the ingredients, which is actually just one ingredient. Got some dill pickle slices here. I'm just adding this on top, and then we are pretty much ready to go. You don't need to add pickles if you don't like them. You can use bread and butter, whatever you want, but I decided to add these pickles, and I think they really added something to the sandwiches. I'm going to baste the sliders with some melted butter and some ranch seasoning packet here. I only used about a third or so of the packet. I thought ranch would go well with the flavors. You don't have to use any kind of seasoning if you don't want to. Just a layer of butter would be really good on this, but again, I'm just sort of winging this based on what I think is going to work flavor-wise. So I'm just basting the sandwiches, the sliders here, and then I'm going to pour the rest of it over because there's not a whole lot left and I didn't want it to go to waste. I went ahead and put these into the preheated oven at 350 just until everything is warmed through. The cheese is more or less melted. So about, I don't know, maybe it was 15, maybe 20 minutes, but here it is. If I had a little bit of the butter left, which is maybe I shouldn't have poured it over, but I could have basted it again just to give it kind of a little bit of a glossy sheen at the top, but that's just purely aesthetics. So I'm going to go in and slice a couple of these sliders out for you. You can see what they look like. They're not fancy, this is not a fancy dinner. We don't do really super fancy meals, but this is really super tasty, and it fed us perfectly for the evening. So this was a good dinner. You can see the pickles here. The cheese is more or less melty. It's nice and softened. And then I served this with a side salad. So this is the dressing that I use. It's the Hughes sugar-free honey Dijon. The salad itself is the Cruciferous Crunch collection from Trader Joe's, with some sliced strawberries and some pecans in there. Really good. So balanced. It was out of this world. I really liked this, and it was really easy to do. So that was the first meal of the week. Next was leftovers. I had a really raging headache this evening, and I remembered I had this in the freezer, so I don't show a whole lot of leftovers all the time, but just wanted to show you this one in particular. This is the low carb Tuscan soup that I had made. I will link it up above in the cards and down below as well, so you could see me how I made this, but it held up really well in the freezer, and it tasted so good. Like, it was really good. All the flavors had already melded together, and I topped it with some shredded Asiago cheese that I had in the refrigerator, and so good, really easy, you know, on those days where you just can't manage to make things from scratch. Another easy one this particular evening, still feeling blah. So I remembered I had this Thai chicken, coconut chicken in the refrigerator that I had purchased from Aldi. It's just heat and serve, so I heated it and served it with a side salad that is the Cruciferous Crunch collection, again from Trader Joe's, with some sesame dressing just right on top of that. And then I added some dry roasted peanuts. So good and just so easy. And that's some leftover garlic fried rice from earlier in the day. And that was the next meal for the week. I think part of the reason why I wasn't feeling so well was just the weather also was gray and gloomy, and it's been rainy and drizzly, and you just don't want to do things. So I am making a Crockpot Posole Verde for my friend is coming over this particular evening. There was an online kind of fundraiser on Zoom, and we bought a ticket and we thought we'd sit and watch together. It was a comedy night that her volunteer organization was sponsoring. So I'm making again this Posole Verde. Now, normally I make this with chicken thighs, but she can't eat chicken, so she suggested using pork. And I'm so glad she did that because this turned out really delicious. I used a pork butt roast that I picked up at Aldi. I picked this up because it was a little bit fattier than the pork shoulder that I had in the freezer. And this was a special night, so I thought I'd go out and buy a little roast for this. So I'm just cutting up the chunks. It is fatty, as you can see. I am kind of trying to salvage the less fattier bits, and I separated the pure fat off to the side. So you can trim it if you'd like, trim the fat if you like, or don't trim it, the fat, fat is flavor. But I'm trimming a bit here, and then I'm going to cut all of the rest of the pieces into very large chunks. To be honest, in hindsight, I think I could have probably just cooked the whole thing as a solid piece of meat, and it would have made the shredding so much easier because I wouldn't have had to fish out all these little pieces, all these little chunks. So next time I will do the full roast, and then I will take the whole roast out once it's cooked and shred it that way. I'm adding the pork to the crock pot now. That's going to go at the very bottom, just moving it around so it's kind of in a single layer for now. And then I'm going to go in and add the rest of the ingredients. Very simple. I'm adding some chicken broth here. I did pick up some chicken broth because my friend does have some dietary restrictions. I didn't want to add the chicken bouillon because I think it has MSG, and I didn't want to take the chance that she was going to not feel well. So I bought some chicken broth here, and I'm adding, this was the whole container, it was 48 ounces, so about that much, and the pork roast I think was just over a couple pounds, I believe. So I'm adding this here, and then I'm going to add a bit of the flavoring. So you can make the salsa verde from scratch if you like. I'd use just something in a jar because it's easy. And so I picked up the mild version of this so that I could have the ability to control the spiciness of it. So I just emptied that there. And then I did have another half of a jar that I added a little bit later. This is 1 large container of hominy, so I'm adding this here. This is, quintessential Posole ingredient, so I'm just adding that in, and that is pretty much it for the crock pot. Just gonna mix it around, make sure everything is inside or underneath the water line, and then I'm gonna cook that. I cooked it on high for about 4 hours, and then I turned it to low and cooked it until she arrived, because I put this in a little bit later in the day. So there you go. After a couple hours, I was a bit impatient. I wanted to kind of just see if it was okay, if it tasted all right. So I did lift the lid. I know you're not really supposed to do that, but I lifted the lid, and at this point, when the meat was cooked, I gave it a little bit of a taste, and this is the point at which I added the other half jar of that salsa verde. Once the pork was done and fork tender to shred, I went ahead and fished out what I could, and I shredded all of that meat. Here we go, adding the pork that is now shredded back into the crock pot. This is pretty much ready to go. I will taste it and adjust. I'm gonna add a little bit of cayenne pepper to spice it up a little bit, and some salt as well. So just do it to taste. But again, I'm gonna turn this to low for another hour or two until she arrives, and then we will be ready to eat. The last thing I did before my friend arrived was to slice up and prep the toppings. So real simple here, we're just doing sliced radishes, some coleslaw mix in lieu of myself shredding the actual cabbage, and then I've got some limes that I cut up to add to the soup. Here is the final spread. My friend brought dessert, and she made some refried black beans here to go with our soup on a dreary night for our comedy night fundraiser. It was so good. We did indulge in a bit of margaritas as well, and I hope you guys enjoyed the video. It was really short, a lot of semi-homemade stuff, but hey, you know, it was just one of those weeks. Anyway, I hope you guys take care. I will see you in the next video, and be well.